What's poppin' YouTube, and welcome back to the Romulus Rant. Today's installment is episode 2 of my proof series. If you haven't already seen episode 1, go ahead and check that out as soon as you're done watching this one. So today's episode will finally put an end to the ongoing ad nauseum debate of just how strong is Vasto Lorde Ichigo. Now, in order to fully submit a definitive answer, we have to first address 4 points, the last of which I'll save for close to the end of this essay. That said, the initial trinity are as follows: the legendary 10 times power multiplier, in-universe cutting power mechanics, and Aizen's golden rule for the Espada. Starting from the top, the multiplier, be it for Bankai, Resurrection, or some hollow-based attack, all inherently amp you with a 10 times buff. The first, and mind you, only time we are introduced to this multiplier as a 5 to 10 times power increase is in manga chapter 120 and episode 45 of the anime. Which is to say, nearly if not every other multiplier skill in this series operates on a 10 times minimum power buff. Nowhere in the entire series of Clorox Bleach is there an example of a mastered Bankai with only a 5 times multiplier, while both Fall Standing and Ichigo's Bankai are heavily applied or flat out stated as a 10 times multiplier. Ichigo could not wash the most prolific recognized member of the 5 noble families twice with only a 5 times increase to his Shikai, any more than Asnat could steal Byakuya's Bankai without a Fall Standing of comparable power. But wait, there's more. Kisuke Ulquiorra was extremely clear in that his technique would cause Ichigo to master his Bankai in 3 days, not simply achieve it. The fact that it takes 100 years to achieve a Bankai and another 10 to master it is all the supplemental evidence you should need to rationalize this much any further. Ichigo masters his Hollow Mask in his battles against Grimjaw, evidenced by the transcendent being that created him, meaning that its multiplier is definitely at least a 10. This is backed by the fact that he remains relative to Grimjaw throughout their entire rivalry. Allow me to explain. So, Tosin states and then demonstrates that Hollowfication is superior to Bankai in the FKT arc. So even if all Bankai are not at 10 times multiplier, Resurrections most definitely are. This means that by default, an unmastered Hollowfication is a 5 times multiplier, and that a mastered version is a 10 times multiplier, if not more in both respects. Ichigo gets cock-slapped by Grimjaw when they first meet, only to relatively match him with his mass multiplier. The reason the unmasked multiplier applies here is because Grimjaw only had 1 arm, i.e. Grimjaw was only at half power at the time. There are numerous different instances throughout the entire Clorox series run where a character's power is doubled or cut in half by the addition or the loss of an arm, from Kenpachi nearly one-shotting Ulquiorra, Old Man Yama losing a battle to Yaki previously won, Yami and Grimjaw nearly being kicked out of the Espada, or Urahara outright stating that the spirit portals of all Soul Reapers are in both hands. Losing one of these is a loss in access to half of your power. As a quick aside, relative power speaks to someone still close enough in power to actually cut an opponent, as opposed to having their hacks or DC negated. So basically, in order to be considered relative in power, your spiritual pressure has to be within a 5 times power margin. Anything less than that has consistently been shown as a blitz or a wash or fold. This is further cemented by a mastered Hollowfication Ichigo being relative to a 2-armed Grimjaw Resurrection. Then, after a quick Zenkai boost from his battle with Grimjaw, making him 10 times stronger than during their battle, Ichigo dons his mask again, becoming 10 times stronger than his new power, i.e. relative to Ulquiorra in base. I won't even acknowledge the part of the community that doesn't believe that Ichigo routinely receives Zenkai, aka power level boosts beyond this, as multiple opponents have stated as much, including Grimjaw, Norethra, Ulquiorra, and Aizen. Let alone the fact that his upper limitless growth is literally the reason the Vanguard considered him a war potential. In-universe cutting powers in reference to both Kenpachi's conversation with Ichigo in the Ryoka invasion arc, and Aizen's conversation with Soifun in the Fate Karakura arc.
Nigeki Kesatsu, huh? What an amusing technique.
Congratulations.
But it's not good enough.
What?
You played yourself.
A Soul Reaper battle involves spirit energy. I can easily overwhelm your silly power by accessing my own spirit energy.
Kenpachi clarifies that when 2 spiritual pressures collide, if the superior race she far outclasses the inferior one, all damage is negated from the inferior spiritual pressure. And then Aizen revealed that this even applies to power hacks, both of which are corroborated by Kenpachi's inability to cut Norita's hero, his hack's ability, until he raises spiritual pressure by utilizing both of his Reishi portals. This of course only applies to opponents who are on guard, as Gin couldn't one-shot butterflies and otherwise any more than suppress Yacht could to Bankai Yamamoto, or Namaya could the entire Schutzstaffel. Finally, for the moment at least, Chair-sama's golden rules. Firstly, and in no particular order, that no espada above rank 5 can perform a resurrection under the canopy of Las Noches. And secondly, that no espada whatsoever is to fire Gran Rey Zero under the canopy of Las Noches. Why? Because either act would destroy the entire fortress. Even if your argument is that Godzin was only referring to the destruction of the canopy, which is fucking fucked-hearted and wrong, the dome still makes up roughly 30% of Las Noches, and, given that the interior has its own star and planetary fucking curvature, it's obviously a pocket dimension hilariously larger than the outside. And a espada release for a Gran Rey Zero that could destroy that much interior surface area far outclasses the DC to take out the entire outer fortress. The outside of Las Noches is so large, it would take 3 days to walk to the gate from the edge they were at. Assuming Las Noches has 2 to 4 gates, while placing Team Clorox at the edge of the fortress means a 3-day journey from their starting point to the center of one side, i.e. 6 days from one edge to the other, and a grand total of 24 days to circle the entire 4-sided city. According to the original calc I stumbled upon, the average person walks around 1.4 meters per second. We multiplied that 6 days by 24 for 144 hours. We multiplied the 60 to get about 8,600 minutes. We multiply that number by 60 to get around 518,000 seconds, which we multiply by 1.4 to get 725,760 meters, or 725.76 kilometers. Finally, we multiply that number by itself to get a total area of 526,727 square kilometers. For comparison, the city of Los Angeles, the largest U.S. city in terms of horizontal surface space, is 1,215 square kilometers, making Las Noches roughly 450 times its surface area. That's 50 times larger than the Hawaiian mainland, 5 times larger than Iceland, and 1.2 times the surface area of the state of California. According to my personal trainer, who likely fathered Idris Elba, Ryan Reynolds, Brad Pitt, and The Rock all in the same fair maiden, he can walk at a pace of 10 minutes per kilometer, or roughly 140 kilometers per 24 hours, i.e. 840 kilometers, which is over 700,000 square kilometers, or roughly 1.5 times the size of California. Even according to Google Maps, which is so dependable BT dubs, you can average a 218-mile or 350-kilometer walk in 3 days. Multiply that by 2 and you're just 25 kilometers shy of the original 6-day travel estimate, i.e. 490,000 square kilometers, which is still 1.15 times larger than the Sunshine State. Consider then that Ichigo, who could run on a treadmill non-stop for 5 days straight, evidenced by a much weaker Uryu training for 7 days straight for the Sanrei glove, ran towards Las Noches for so long he got exhausted, and still couldn't discern if they'd gotten any closer to the fortress due to its sheer enormity. 840 kilometers, or simply 700 kilometers, is still nearly the length of California north to south. Read my lips. No way, that doesn't work. Read my font. Las Noches is virtually California by California in size. Should you require even more context than a handful of separate, verifiable, independent sources, which almost perfectly corroborate the word of a former espada, coupled with Ichigo becoming exhausted from running so long, each espada literally having enough land for a Burj Khalifa or more, and the fact that the interior horizon has actual fucking curvature, Tyke Kubo personally told me to say fuck you. So let's recap. Each espada was powerful enough to destroy Las Noches with a Gran Rey Zero. Ichigo has mastered his Bankai and Hollowfication by the Hueco Mundo arc, i.e. a 10 times multiplier to both forms. Resurrection is comparable, if not blatantly superior to Bankai, and each espada chronologically is at least as powerful in base as the rank below them is in release.
Ichigo Kurosaki. It's pointless. You cannot defeat me.
which means Ulquiorra in base was casually 100,000 times more powerful than Arimiero, who could destroy California by California with his Grand Ray Sero. No? Awaken Kenpachi withstanding, Shinsui and Jushiro are heavily implied multiple times throughout the series as the strongest captains of the Gotei 13, an argument only strengthened by Kyoraku telling Stark that Bankai Toshiro still needed 100 years to be relative to him in power. Couple that with the new captain commander being the only member of the Gotei 13 who hadn't trained prior to clapping the first or second most powerful Shustaffel member while near death and depletion is Ryatsu, and the power gaps necessary for the face-offs we saw in the Fake Karakura Town art line up perfectly. Zoifun would be in full Skeletor cosplay right the fuck now if not for the Hollified God Aikido helping her jump Baragon like Mojo Jojo in an episode of the Powerpuff Girls. Anyways, man, thanks for checking out part 1 of the video. I fucked with you.
Then we'll fox with each other.
So I'll try and be quick about part 2. Hit that like button, subscribe, and click that notification bell. Oh yeah, and don't forget to hit that dislike button if you're a bitch.